Hey guys, welcome back to another Warframe video. Today I'll be showcasing a Meg setup that allows her to actually deal damage using the Akbronco Prime as her main damage source, and the Afentis just as utility, so the Akbronco Prime has better DPS stats. Additionally, we also have Mind Control, which synergizes well with Magnetize, because normally Mind Control, you're typically only going to get about maybe 1,000 or 2,000% bonus damage on mind control with the majority of frames in this game, but Meg in specific can actually use her Magnetize blow-up ability when the ability ends, or if you prematurely detonate it, to actually charge up mind control, so that scaled up damage, so they're already scaling up damage based on level, but now you also additionally add 15,000 to maybe roughly 20,000% extra damage. Now, this isn't necessary, you don't need this at all, but I find it to be decent on Meg because the radiation procs from the mind control target adds an additional crowd control, as well as kind of synergizing a little bit with Magnetize, because if your mind control target is like a heavy gunner and they shoot the Magnetize, that scaled up damage will actually exceed sometimes your capabilities of damage output, just because their damage scales with level. So the higher level you get, the more effective this mind control target will actually be compared to your own weapons. So that's kind of interesting. Now, this isn't a new player build by any means, because we're using shards, and we are also using a Riven mod on my Akbronco Prime. So this build can be effective, but just not as effective without all these additional equipment and such. So on our Mag, we actually have Pistolier, and this is important for our Akbronco Prime, because if we manage to get a headshot kill, which is easy with Magnetize because the bullets will go right towards their head if we shoot the top of the bubble. So now we have massive efficiency, so we can pump as much base damage as we can into Magnetize. Now, Magnetize doesn't care about crits, it doesn't care about status, it doesn't care about faction mods, so we're only focused on doing as much damage and DPS as possible. Now, we also have Augmented to supplement the loss of strength from overextended, because we do want strength for Fracturing Crush to actually reduce all armor, and then once this is fully stacked up, this will reduce all armor. This actually also isn't that necessary, the augment for Fracturing Crush, because Magnetize will do enough damage to enemies that you don't actually need to remove their armor. It's just a nice to have feature. And then worthy camaraderie here is just because, like I said before, the bullets of you firing into Magnetize from the top will hit the head, so we'll just get a tiny bit of extra damage against the target that we're trying to kill in the Magnetize. And we're also using Magnetize Discharge. Now, this isn't, the disarm part isn't that necessary, it's just to give us extra range, but we can also detonate it on command, and then if enemies happen to not die from the explosion, they will get disarmed, usually. So this is still just a nice to have mod, but it's not required. Now, the reason we're using the Afentis is simply for its unique trait. So if we throw it down with the alt fire, we get bonus reload speed, fire rate, and the ammo maximum. The ammo maximum doesn't matter, nor does the recoil, but we get that fire rate and reload speed buff. So if for some reason we don't get the headshot efficiency, so we have unlimited ammo for a few seconds, or even if we do, it still helps to have that reload speed and the fire rate to increase our DPS, and this is just to get the weapon out as quickly as possible. This isn't also necessary at all. This is just so if I was using it in the main fire to kind of crowd control enemies, it has bonus status duration, and that's literally it. So you just need a bunch of fire rate and reload, and then that's all you need. And for my Akbronco Prime, this is the main damage dealer that we're doing here today. We have secondary Deadhead, obviously, for that bonus headshot damage, which is important to kill the target as quickly as possible. We have as much base damage as humanly possible, in addition to as much elemental damage as humanly possible. And my Riven mod is even more damage and multi-shot. And what's important here is, if you notice the status chance, we don't want the target that we target with Magnetize to die from a status effect that will dissolve them or vaporize them, including blast damage. So we want to try to avoid status chance. Ideally, you would have a Riven like this, but minus status chance, ironically, just so you don't, you reduce the chance of killing the target with a status effect that makes them dissolve, because there is a bug that has been in the game for a really long time, where if the target dies that you magnetized and they dissolve, enemies stop being pulled into the magnetize. So you have to. It's still okay, but you just have to manually detonate it more if that happens. So with the somewhat low status chance of this weapon, it's not likely to happen, but it can. And then in terms of other weapons, it doesn't matter. I just had this on because I was messing with a different build. And in terms of companions, you don't. The companion type doesn't really matter. Just ensure that, like especially the Hellstrom is excellent for this because it has so many projectiles. See, notice I don't have any status effects that will dissolve the enemy because since it has such high status effect, it will interfere with Magnetize if they manage to get like a dissolving proc on them. So you want to make sure that there's nothing like heat. I think Toxin also kind of dissolves enemies. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then Blast for sure. So you want to avoid those kinds of status effects. But any companion and any companion weapon is fine. Now for this, I'm actually going to pause the enemies just so I can explain the process, what you want to do. So the first thing you're going to want to do is bubble the enemy, pop down the Afentis, and then shoot towards the top of the bubble. And hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you'll get the Arcane to proc. If not, the Afentis will keep your damage up. So yeah, I didn't get it to proc, but that's okay. We're going to keep pumping damage in there. And then watch when this explodes. 11 million damage. It will one-shot most enemies, and that's without viral, of course. So now we can do this again. The enemy's off. Hopefully they won't kill me. It's totally possible because I'm just trying to showcase this. I'm going to go like this first. Try to get a headshot. Did I get it? Nope, not yet. Nope, I might still not get it, but that's okay. And as enemies are walking in, they're going to take more and more damage. Okay. Pretty good. And then when it explodes, 89 million because that enemy had a bunch of viral on them. So the weapon itself is actually okay just because it has this much damage, but you're going to want to remove the enemy armor to actually be effective in that case. Now I wanted to show off why you don't want enemies to dissolve, but it's kind of hard to tell in the simulacrum. So I'm going to try to do it with the Archiplasmor, and if they die from the Archiplasmor, they will automatically dissolve. And that's what I'm hoping for. So if their body, okay, see their body was on fire and heat. Now when these enemies come here, they shouldn't. Yes, okay, now it's working. You can see the body's gone, so these enemies are not being sucked in. I guess it's not as bad as I thought it was, because the enemies were still sucked in for a while. Interesting. But yeah, normally, if the body is destroyed, enemies can't get sucked into the bubble without using pull. So your damage kind of decreases, but I guess it's not as bad as I thought, because it looked like the enemy was still getting sucked in as the body was immolated there from heat. But anyways, either way, you still don't want to have any kind of dissolving effects on your weapons, just so enemies can continue to be pulled into Magnetize, because it turns into a blender. And then another tip that you can do, obviously, I haven't showed off the mind control aspect yet. Oops, I don't have my Afentis. Well, that's okay. I'll just do it with this. Now I'm going to try to stack up some damage in here. And then mind control an enemy, and then detonate it just before it ends. Now this mind-controlled enemy, thankfully they didn't get disarmed. Now they have 17,000% extra damage. Now, if I summon more enemies and put a bubble, and hopefully the heavy gunner shoots them, they're going to absorb so much damage into that Magnetize that it can kill them by itself. And this is what I'm talking about with scaling damage. As enemies get higher and higher level, their base damage increases, and then mind control multiplies that as a final damage multiplier, I'm pretty sure. So whatever damage they do, let's say they shoot you for 1,000,000 damage, well, it's going to multiply that 1,000,000 by 17,000. And no matter how much you stack up damage on your own weapons, you're never going to get this much damage into Magnetize, especially since this is base damage. They don't really do status, or they don't care about crit. So this is another thing, and you don't even necessarily need Magnetize itself. This heavy gunner is going to obliterate these enemies on her own. So you're even through armor, it's doing 27,000 a bullet. This is about the best case scenario you can get with mind control, and obviously there are bugs. Now this mind controlled enemy has stopped doing anything. But even so, this is a very handy setup that you can do. Keeps Meg safe because she can press her 4 at any time to regain shield gate and blow up Magnetize at will. So you don't have to wait until the Magnetize ends on its own. You can simply detonate whenever you want. You'll do a little less damage, but I found that's actually fine because, like I said, it'll disarm, has a chance of disarming enemies that don't immediately die. So yeah, hopefully this video gave you some ideas on maybe how to use Meg. And like I said, you can use any weapon you want, but you want as much damage and multi-shot weapons as possible. The Kuva Hex, another popular one. It's not as good as these, but simply because of that arcane that gives you unlimited ammo, because you can pump so much DPS compared to the Heck. But the Heck is a good choice because it comes with that Scattering Justice augment to give it insane amounts of multi-shot, and that's what you need. It'll just be a little slower. So yeah, thanks for watching.